Welcome back to the Free Code Camp podcast. I'm Quincy Larson, teacher and founder of freeCodeCamp.org. Each week we're bringing you awesome interviews with software engineers. Today's no different. We're going to be talking with Ihechikara Abba. He is a software engineer who has a chess ELO rating of 2285, putting him among the top competitive players. And he recently published a course on FreeCodeCamp on chess endgames, and it covers a lot of really cool stuff. He also published a book, a handbook with FreeCodeCamp. I've got links to all those, and we're going to be talking to him momentarily. But first, if you're wondering about the sound quality, I'm at a basketball court. The power went out in my entire neighborhood, so I had to improvise. So hope it's not too distracting hearing all the basketball noise. The audio quality will improve during the actual interview. Let's jump into some community news, though. First, I want to share this awesome Got It course that we just published. If you're interested in game development, this is the course for you. You're going to start learning this open source game development framework and make your own 2D Mario style platformer. It's completely open source. You're going to be using the GD script programming language, which is very Python-like, and the two teachers are awesome. Next, FreeCodeCamp also published a course taught by Bo Carnes, who runs the FreeCodeCamp YouTube channel, and it covers Symfony, which is a popular PHP framework, and how to harden your applications. It's going to cover a lot of popular security countermeasures that you can incorporate just so you can have a common sense, secure PHP app, because PHP is not known for its out-of-the-box security, but you can harden it. Next, FreeCodeCamp always encourages people to participate in as many hackathons as possible. I am a frequent hackathon judge. I did dozens of hackathons when I was learning to code. And this article, written by a developer from Malaysia who recently graduated from college, just talked a lot about the impact that hackathons have had on his career and how it was a huge boost to his network and to his credibility as a developer coming out of school. Next, if you haven't heard, FreeCodeCamp launched daily coding challenges. This is Tom Monlock. He is a software engineer on our team. Sorry, basketball just flew at me. And he is going to be on the FreeCodeCamp podcast soon. But he is developing daily coding challenges in both Python and JavaScript. You can go, you can check them out. You can get some quick 15, 20-minute practice just solving some data structures and algorithms problems every single day. It's awesome. Check it out. It's free on freecodecamp.org/learn. I've got a link to the announcement article in the video description as well. This is an awesome video essay by Adam Neely, a bass player and classically trained musician, and he wrote about how this Janet Jackson song from 1989 breaks laptop hard drives through this very specific frequency that occurs a whole lot throughout the song. It's awesome. If you're interested in hardware, if you're interested in like acoustics and physics, this is the video essay for you. Check it out. You can click it in the description after you finish listening to this podcast. And our song of the week is Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation. Awesome banger from 1989. It sounds so 90s, but she was ahead of her time. She was only 23 in the video with this incredible dance choreography, this really kind of brutal industrial like vibe to it. It's awesome. You should check out the video just for the choreography. But the song's really cool too if you just have time to listen to that. Link in the description. Now let's jump to my interview with Ihechikara. He has been a software engineer on FreeCodeCamp's team for many years. Been working on the Python curriculum, which is live. It's not complete, but a lot of it is live. You can do Python right in your browser on FreeCodeCamp. And we are going to delve into so many different topics. We're going to learn about how he thinks learning chess makes you a better developer. We're going to talk about his love of embedded systems, Arduino, how you can get into that. We'll talk about the Nigerian tech scene. We're going to talk about his love of technical writing, how he stays ahead of AI and its mediocre writing capabilities by just constantly learning and constantly practicing his own technical writing. Check it out. Just a quick reminder that this podcast is made possible by the 1,896 chill human beings who support the FreeCodeCamp community each month with a donation. learn more and support our charity. freeCodeCamp.org/donate.
Ihechikara, welcome to the Free Code Camp podcast.
Hi, Quincy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here, man. Congratulations on publishing the chess endgames course and the accompanying handbook, which is kind of a textual form of that video course, which we published on Free Code Camp a few weeks ago. Let's talk a little bit about chess. I want to get into your background as an engineer, but first, why should developers consider learning chess or getting better at chess if they know the basics?
Okay, yeah. So I think there are multiple reasons why developers should get into playing chess. Because there are certain skills that you can get from playing chess that you can transfer into software development. And I'd say the first one should be creativity. So chess, unlike many board games, it doesn't rely solely on luck. There's no pattern of how to play chess exactly where you can win based on luck. So chess, you have to be very creative when you play chess. There are an infinite number of positions that can appear in a chessboard. It's just 64 squares, but there are so many ways that you can play chess. And then, similar to software development, a programming language is just that, a programming language, but there are so many things you can do with them. And then, how one developer uses the language isn't how the other does. And so those are two similarities between chess and software development. So creativity is one of them. Another one has to be pattern recognition. In chess, there are people that I know that have memorized thousands of lines. So they read chess books, they study games from grandmasters or players that are way stronger than them. So chess has a lot of pattern recognition involved in it. So if you are able to recognize maybe a pattern of attack, it becomes way easier to recognize that in multiple games where you play it. And then if you combine creativity and pattern recognition, that means you can actually set up that line for yourself. So you can see how I can maybe, since I know this pattern has to work this way, I can use creativity to force my opponents into creating that line for me. So similar to software development, pattern recognition. Software development has plenty syntaxes when it comes to maybe programming languages. So you can recognize so many patterns. Let's say data structures and algorithms. These are patterns on their own. And you can use these patterns to build systems. So pattern recognition is very important in chess, and you can connect that to software development as well. So maybe a for loop, you can use a for loop for an example. A for loop is a pattern. You know that a for loop starts with the keyword, parentheses, curly brackets. That is a pattern already. If you look through someone's code and you've been coding for a while, you are recognizing patterns in the code. If you are going to debug code, you are recognizing patterns while you debug the code. So you're not just getting that from the top of your head. So pattern recognition. Another one has to be patience. While playing chess, while learning chess, you have to be very patient. For example, I have rated to 200 online, which I would say is my peak rating on natural strength. I can't get above that if I don't learn more principles about chess or study books or study grandmasters or even get a coach. So patience is involved when playing chess. While you are playing, for instance, if you are playing a timed match, let's say you are playing a classical match that lasts for 30 minutes, it requires a lot of patience. Thinking for 30 minutes is not as easy as it sounds. For instance, I've been playing bullet chess for the better part of 1 year, which has actually affected other time controls for me. So I've been playing bullet chess like almost every day for the last 1 year, which is terrible for anybody playing chess because it sort of disrupts when you play longer time controls because you'll be so eager to just play. So I'm just using that as an example. Patience. When you play chess, it takes a lot of analysis. What is my opponent going to play? What should I play next? And then imagine that you think for maybe let's say 5 minutes and you play a move and immediately your opponent responds and then you realize that you actually made poor judgments. Similarly, when you're learning chess, chess is not easy. Chess is very difficult. The beginner level is quite easy. You just learn how to move the pieces, you learn how to identify them, how to set up a chessboard. But once you're done with that stage, every other thing sort of becomes a bit difficult. And it's okay to be difficult. Things don't have to be as easy as they sound. Similar to programming. Programming languages are difficult. Coding is difficult. Software development is difficult. It has never been easy. But if you can master the fundamentals and the basics, which is why I would advise anybody learning how to code. You should always master the basics because this helps you in the future. If you are debugging code, if you know the basics, you know where to start. So it requires a lot of patience. You cannot become a very good chess player in a year. The same way you cannot be the best developer in 1 year. You can land a job in software development after 3 months of learning or after 6 months of learning. But at that point, you're actually not a very good developer because it takes time. You have to learn on the job. You have to follow trends. It requires a ton of patience. And then there's strategic thinking, which is the ability to just focus and think. I'll just say thinking. Let's just remove the strategic. Let's just talk about thinking. Chess involves a lot of thinking. I have a friend that can play chess blindfolded, so he can turn his chair around and then close his eyes. And then he'll tell you where to move his pieces. And then you call out the positions they are moving to. So using chess notations, you can say pawn moves to e4. And then he's not looking at the board, but then he can tell you what to play next. So this involves a lot of thinking. Chess is mostly about thinking. But chess is not a game of luck. There are people who have studied chess. There are people who have played chess for years. And just like coding, having the experience of writing code for 3 years doesn't make you a good developer. And that's the same thing with chess. I've been playing chess since 2011, but I'm not a grandmaster. So it just means for the better parts of these years, I've just been a hobby player. I've not played competitive chess or registered for a FIDE tournament. I've been playing chess just as a hobby player. But for over a decade, I've been playing chess. I'm not a grandmaster. I have over 26,000 games on Lichess, but I'm not a grandmaster. So it takes intentional efforts in improving your skills to actually be good at this things. So patience, creativity, pattern recognition, and one more thing is time management. Time management is something that is very big in chess. So when you're playing against an opponent, you have your own clock, they have their own clock. So within that time frame, you have to come up with the best strategy. And similarly to software development, when you deliver products, when you build projects, it has to be timed. Time management, sort of like project or product management. It's all about timing, thinking, planning, and execution. Yes.
Okay, awesome. So that's a lot to break down, but I'm going to attempt to do it. First of all, 26,000 games on Lichess, which is the open source free software, free chess website that you and I have both used in the past. I mean, I guess you use it a lot if you're playing 26,000 rounds. And the things that you're emphasizing, first of all, I want to point out, you said that there are infinite number of chess board positions. Technically, like a vast number that a human cannot, I guess, understand or comprehend, but it is technically finite. So I just want to be pedantic and point that out in case there are any like number theorists or something listening that are like, that's not right. Yeah. 26,000 matches, and you have been playing since 2011, so about 14 years as of recording this, and you have still not reached Grandmaster, but you are getting closer. I just want to point out that you are probably in the top 1 or 2% of chess players. And so let's call out some of the different attributes that you have mentioned. Patience, being able to focus for extended periods of time. That is a skill that one has to actively develop. We're in an environment where our, faculties, our ability to focus, our ability to, have patience and do like long-term thinking sessions and stuff like that is being eroded. Like all the entertainment, everything is just getting shorter and faster and more like quick dopamine squirts and stuff like that. Right. Yeah. And chess is this, 2,000-year-old game where you're sitting there staring at 64 squares and moving pieces around. Right. It's like, it hasn't fundamentally changed in so long, even as everything has changed around it. Right. Time management, of course, you've got your clock. You need to make sure that you don't use too much of the clock so that you have plenty of clock later in case there's some sort of computationally intensive scenario that arises from the game. Adaptation, a lot of times like you'll get like a legacy code base and it's already one way and you can't just like start over. Just like you can't start over a chess game just because you had like kind of a spoiled opening. You have to adapt and roll with the punches, right? Yeah. Mastering the basics really well is something I always advocate that devs do with programming, like really getting your basic data structures, algorithms underneath you so that you can like build on top of those. Pattern recognition, being able to look at a chessboard and figure out, okay, how did this game likely like arrive at this, or what sequence of moves is my opponent likely to do based on my understanding of openings. You mentioned you had a friend who'd like memorized like 1,000 different lines, strategic like sequences of moves and things like that. So there are a lot of parallels. Is that an accurate summary?
Yes, that's a good summary. Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about somebody who is a dev who wants to get into chess. Maybe they played as a kid. Maybe they know the basic rules and stuff. Where should they start? What should they do if they want to get deeper into chess to develop their kind of like neuroplasticity, develop their time management, their patience, their ability to focus for long periods of time, and with the hope that a lot of this translates into them being a better dev?
Yeah, okay. So I'd say there are two ways to learn chess now. You can learn physically or you can learn online. So if you're going to take the physical route, you just get a chessboard. You can find it at any sports store or wherever you can get it around. So getting a chessboard is the first thing. And then if you have a chess community around you, you can join one. But the very first step as playing chess is just getting to know the basics, the pieces, how they move. So if you're going to play online, a resource I would always recommend is Lichess. It's open source and has a ton of tools to help you develop. So Lichess actually has a page where you can learn all the basics, how the pieces move, how to identify each piece, or how to set up the board and all that, how to capture. So as a developer trying to learn how to play chess, I would recommend using Lichess, lichess.org, and then learn the pieces. Who is the king? Who is the queen? Who is the bishop? Who is the rook? Who is the pawn? How do they move? And then you can learn how to communicate in chess. You don't communicate chess just through English. There are chess notations. Like each square on the board has a number and a digit attached to it. So using that, you can start learning using chess books. Although I would not recommend chess books for beginners. Start with the very basics. Chess books are sort of like when you're done with the basics, you know how to move the pieces, you know how to capture, you know what a check is, and you understand that the overall goal of a chess match is to capture the king. So you just start with the basics. After you're done mastering the basics, you can then start thinking about certain concepts in chess, maybe pawn structure, end games, middle game, opening moves, and all that. So that would be my advice.
Okay, awesome. And your course covers algebraic chess notation, and it also covers many of the common kind of end game patterns, like the smothering mate, for example, or like the back rank mate with a rook and things like that. Those very common kind of basics of actually ending the game and capturing the king.
Yes. So my course starts with chess notations. It does two things for you. First, you understand how to communicate chess with any other person that knows how to use chess notations. And two, it helps you use that book because the book relies heavily on chess notations to pass information. And then you get to endgame patterns, which is something we mentioned before, how to recognize patterns. You'd be surprised that when you go back to analyze most of the chess games you've played online, you're going to see opportunities that you missed. You didn't miss them because they were not very obvious. You missed them because you couldn't recognize those patterns. So the book just dives into endgame patterns. How do you recognize when I have a mate in one instead of capturing the queen? You can sacrifice the queen just to win the game if you can recognize the pattern involved in doing it. So it shows you the back rank mates. It shows you how to checkmate with a king and a queen, how to checkmate with two rooks, how to checkmate with just your queen and the king coming in when you're done doing all the attack. So it covers most of the endgame patterns, some of the endgame patterns that beginners should know.
Yeah. And I will just say that like there are so many counterintuitive aspects of chess. Like you want to preserve your pieces, their value, right? You want material, right? Material, I guess. And at the same time, you need to be able to effectively deploy that. So it teaches you kind of like trade-offs, and a lot of like conventional wisdom and thinking and stuff goes out the window when all of a sudden a unique opportunity to get like a surprise mate pops up. And some of the biggest, most legendary chess games are that, like, you know, a sequence of dramatic sacrifices that, or just forcing people to capture the piece, and you're throwing so much material at them, and then suddenly you've got like this very specific pin, or you talked about like using the knight in very specific ways in your course as well. So It sounds like people should go to LI Chess. They should go through the basics. I would also encourage them to read your book or watch your video course, and they can learn how to play chess. And then it can just be like something that they can do for fun as time progresses, and they can gradually get better at it. But one of the things you mentioned, reviewing older games and seeing things that you didn't see in the heat of the moment, especially if you're playing like bullet chess or something, you don't have a lot of time to think. Bullet chess, by the way, are you playing like 1 minute, 2 minute clock? How much time do you get?
Yeah, I'm playing
Total.
1 minute.
1 minute
clock. Yes.
An entire game could be like 40 moves or something like that. You're making all those decisions compressed into 1 minute on your clock. And so you hit the chess clock, your opponent moves. So 2 minutes total. The longest the game, I guess, could be would be like 1 minute and 59 seconds or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So a lot of it is just muscle memory. It's pattern recognition. It's almost the equivalent of like competitive programming.
Yes. So I'd say if you're going to improve at chess, it involves like studying your old games, studying puzzles, reading chess books, or just following chess content. So one of the most efficient ways to improve in chess is studying your moves. And luckily, we have so many strong engines online that can analyze your games and then show you patterns where you missed maybe opportunities or where you blundered a move and all that. So,
awesome. So I want to dive a little deeper into your background and how you got into chess and how you got into software engineering. You grew up in Nigeria. You were a kid in like a very large family by U.S. standards, 6 kids. And maybe you can talk a little bit about your childhood and some of the challenges you faced along the way to getting to where you are today. You know, a software engineer, building the Python curriculum for FreeCodeCamp, doing a whole lot of platform development as well, and then playing a whole lot of chess at a high competitive level.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in the southeastern part of Nigeria. And like you mentioned, I grew up in a big family. I had 5 siblings, and one of them was a twin brother. So I have a twin brother. He's not in the tech industry. But yeah, growing up was fun. I would say it was fun. I had hobbies like most other kids. I watched a lot of football. I played video games. I just the regular stuff that you do as kids. So a bit more about my background. In 2004, I lost my dad. At that point, financially, things were still sort of okay in the family. My mom was raising the 6 of us alone as a single mother. And then around 2011, my family had a financial crisis. So the finances crashed in 2011, which sort of led to a ripple effect that made things very difficult for us. So my older brother had an issue with substance. So in the process of trying to take him to rehabs and getting him to stay clean, the family's finances crashed. So around 2019, this was when I was in my first year in the university. There's something called academic probation in Nigerian universities, where if your CGPA is not up to a certain point, you have to be placed on academic probation. So that's where I found myself. I can't talk about the circumstances that led to that. But yeah, I was placed on academic probation, which was a very low point in my life. So I lost interest in so many things like watching football. I've not watched football since 2019. So I was sort of very down and I would say depressed at that point. So that's when I Googled top skills to learn in 2019. I was looking for a distraction, something to keep my mind off like the series of events that have been happening over the years. So that's when I discovered software development. I remember seeing mobile development, web development. I was just looking for something difficult to keep me preoccupied. I know it's weird saying that coding was like a hobby back then, but it was like a hobby for me. But the thing is, like, I learned coding in a box. I was not aware of tech trends or industry standards and all that stuff. So I started with HTML. I was learning on an app. I was learning HTML, then CSS. To show you how difficult things were back then, linking your CSS to your HTML was very difficult for me then because I couldn't understand it. I finished learning HTML and then they said you can design your website using CSS. And then I would write the CSS code, but it's not reflecting in the browser. And it's just because I did not link it. And then that was a problem because I was not learning how to code using resources online. I was just maybe researching what do I learn next and all that stuff. So I was learning coding in a box. which made it very, very difficult for me at that point. So when I finally discovered tech communities, at that point, I had finished learning HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I even learned jQuery. Back then, people would tell you not to learn jQuery. I didn't know that. I was not in communities. I was not following trends. I was just learning coding just to get my mind off the things that were happening in my life at that point. So I remember joining the group at that point in 2020, and people were like dropping their projects. You would see an e-commerce website, you would see a to-do list app, and then I just dropped my own GitHub link that I linked back to a project that just grabs the current dates. Sorry, a code that just grabs the current dates and displays it on a browser. That was my project at that point. Just a piece of JavaScript code that just shows you the current dates. So I started seeing that you can actually make a career out of software development, and it's very possible. People were sharing resources, talking about roadmaps. I never had those things at that point. So in 2020, I started taking coding more seriously. Like, I was taking it seriously at that point, but I was now focused on working as a software developer. And then I remembered I can actually use this to get my family out of the financial mess we were in that time. So I had one problem, being visible online. I'm not someone that is very visible on social media. But then an alternative to that would be open source. So I Googled top ways to make yourself visible online. And then open source was one of them. I started writing articles for the freeCodeCamp blog. And then I remembered how I actually got the job. I had an offer from a third-party platform that wanted me to publish an article on the freeCodeCamp blog. And I remembered one thing. I was improving at technical writing because I had an editor. And this is something I would highly recommend. Find people who are better at what you're doing. So it just compresses the time that you're going to use to learn stuff. It took me one whole year to learn JavaScript. If I was part of a community, it would have taken less time because I would know the resources to use and all that. So I had an editor who was helping me improve at writing articles for the freeCodeCamp blog. And then I got this offer from a third-party platform saying they would pay me $300 to publish the articles on freeCodeCamp. That was good money then. I needed the money. But then I was thinking, I'm still improving at this skill, and I need this skill to land a full-time job. So I emailed Abby. Abby is the editor. So I told her that this company reached out to me, blah, 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 that I just wanted to be sure. I don't want to lose my contributor accounts because I want to be very sure that this is something that can happen. And then she said, okay, I'll forwarded your message to Quincy. And that same night, I saw on Twitter that Quincy Larson followed you. I was like, okay, what's going on? And then you sent me a message that, can we get on a quick call? And that's how I landed in the tech industry. So, yeah.
Yeah, and just to be clear, like there are lots of like companies that basically like try to get like sneak articles onto publications like freeCodeCamp, like the one you mentioned, and that's not something we condone. And we generally like if we discover that there's like some sort of conflict of interest or some monetary incentive in publishing an article that's not obvious, like an open source maintainer writing about their popular open source project, that you could interpret as a conflict of interest, but it's totally fine because like freeCodeCamp's happy to publicize those kinds of things. Once they reach a certain amount of like traction and stuff, we don't want people like the projects that have like 0 GitHub stars to like talk about it. But when it's a company that's like, hey, we need backlinks and we're using freeCodeCamp, freeCodeCamp has really high domain authority because it's a popular website. And like, yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to give some context to people who are wondering like, oh, that's interesting. But you were very candid about it, and also you're a very skilled writer. So when you reached out to me, like you were already on my radar and stuff like that, and we talked for a while, and you've been active, contributing tons of articles of the freeCodeCamp publication. So that thing that you said just a moment ago, that open source is an alternative to building a social media presence, like contributing to open source. Can you go further into that? Like how you would advise somebody who maybe doesn't like playing the social media game, which I tell people like, you kind of have to, but it sounds like you don't necessarily have to, that you can just contribute a lot to open source and that can potentially be an in.
Yeah, so in any way you think about it, open source is a win for you as a developer. So the first thing is that you get a lot of people who have been doing this for years. they can recommend you. They can say, okay, I've been working with this guy for a couple of months, or this guy has been contributing to our project for a couple of months. So I can recommend him to do this or that. So how I started contributing to open source was basically the freeCodeCamp publication. It has a wide reach. So this one thing I would say, I have never done a job that I applied for. I've never done a job that I applied for in tech. All the jobs I've gotten have been either from recommendations or from the freeCodeCamp blog. I remember I mentioned that I learned how to code from an app. I even got an invitation from the app to write for their own publication as well. So I have never posted online that, please, can you help me get this job or that? It has been from open source. So find open source communities that are very active and intentional about improving maybe the quality of code or improving the lives of developers or helping developers be more efficient. Contribute to those platforms. Find efficient ways to join them. There are multiple ways to contribute to open source that doesn't require you to write code. You can write articles, you can translate resources, you can even find a missing comma in an article and just open a pull request that, please, can you add a comma to this specific sentence? And then they would say, okay, we have somebody that could work as an editor for us. Just keep this person in mind and wait for them. Whatever you can contribute to, it doesn't have to be something very technical. If it is editing videos, posting videos, just talking, you can be an evangelist for the community. Talk about what that community is doing. If they push changes, new changes for the community, talk about what they are doing. You don't have to be a technical person to work for them. So what this does is that it pushes you out into the community. People get to see what you're doing. People get to see your skill sets. People get to help you improve. So if you're not very good at developing, you can find the patterns each team uses. So if their own code rules apply in a certain way, you can learn it that way. Similar to blogs having publication style guides. Each code base has their own style guides, how you write your code. So you're already practicing clean code by doing that. So even if you don't end up getting a job, if you end up leaving that community, you are living way better than you came in. So yes, that's it.
Yeah, 100%. Like, you're getting practice, and even if you can't convert those open source contributions to a job, those are still part of your public record. Those are still things you can brag about when applying to other companies, or eventually, if you keep contributing to a lot of open source projects, maybe one will be able to pay you to become essentially paid staff, a paid maintainer of the project. I want to talk a little bit about the work that you have done on the freeCodeCamp Python curriculum and some of the upcoming Python learning features that freeCodeCamp is going to offer.
Yeah, so I started working on the Python curriculum, I think last year, 2024. I was writing articles and editing articles before then. It was quite an experience because when I joined the Python curriculum team, I was not very used to writing tests. So if you're a freeCodeCamp, if you're a camper, you've noticed that when you answer a question, you sort of get a response back. Maybe you get a hint about how you should be writing the code, or if you pass it, you get something motivational, and then you get to the next step. So that's basically what I do when we develop the Python curriculum. We write tests. You can say it's instructional design. It's not just about writing tests. It's about putting those tests in a way that will help you improve, how to learn, how to structure the curriculum, all those steps you see, how to break them down. So one thing I would say helped a lot was the documentation. When I joined the Python team, what I used to do was I'd go and study tests from other projects and then try and replicate those in my own. But there was a documentation that I could use. And I saw that documentation, I learned it, things got way easier. So there's a new Python curriculum coming very soon. I will let Quincy talk more about that, but there are a ton of changes coming. It's going to be project-based. It's going to be probably, I know I'm working for freeCodeCamp, but I just have to say, it's probably going to be the best resource that you're going to use for learning Python. It's going to be divided into steps. You're going to have workshops for learning. You're going to have labs. We are going to reinforce each concept. So you're going to learn each concept, not over and over again, but in separate ways that all add up to each other. So that's basically what's coming soon, but I'm not going to leak what I'm not going to leak. So I'm going to let Quincy talk about that.
Yeah,
but there
I mean, it's
is a ton
fine.
coming. Yeah, yeah.
If people are listening to the podcast, that means they're like pretty engaged with the community, and they should be rewarded with like advanced knowledge of what's coming. By the way, FreeCodeCamp is open source, and you could just go and like look at a lot of this work as it's being done in real time. And then, we're very serious about teaching people Python properly, interactively, with like thousands of tests, thousands and thousands that double as kind of hints, because it's not just like this. These are the failing tests. It's like this test is failing, and this is the message associated with it. Like, oh, try doing this. So it's kind of like the hints are baked into the failing tests, and they're set up in a sequence where like you should be able to get them to go from this to this, and they'll catch. Like, we have to anticipate all kinds of places where people might go off the rails or misunderstand some concept or something like that. There's definitely an art and a science to that aspect of instructional design writing tests. So one of the questions I have is, you have written a lot of documentation over the years. You've written a lot of technical writing over the years. A lot of people may be thinking, whoa, don't you just send an LLM to prep your docs, to write your tests, things like that? Like, LLMs can do a lot of things. And what are the limits of LLMs when it comes to technical writing, when it comes to prepping documentation, when it comes to writing tests, in your experience?
Yeah, so I used to use LLMs to write regex code for some tests. When we used to use regex to test some of the Python curriculum projects, it works until it stops. So it's going to give you what you're looking for at first. But then when it starts getting complex, you then realize that you just grab the code from it and then edit the code to work efficiently. Another example is when I was adding posts for our social media platforms for the articles that were published last week. I sort of grabbed a couple of posts from Twitter and then put it for the LLM to use as a guide, and then told it, using this particular guide, can you summarize this article? So what it does is it just grabs the format you gave it and then replicates each sentence using the next article, which is not something you want. You don't want people to see all your posts looking the same. So there are so many limitations to it. Yes, it can help you be more productive, but there's a point where that productivity starts diving down. So you might have a large code base, and at the point it can help you start up, maybe set up your basic Node.js server or a basic HTML page. But once things starts to get complex, this might be different for other developers. I'm just talking from personal experience. So there gets to a point where all the results you get from the AI sort of starts being bad. At first, you'll be enjoying it. Okay, this works. Write this test for me. You evaluate the test. It's working in a browser. You say, okay, I'm done with this step. Let's go to the next one. You did the first step very fast. But now you're going to use double the time to do the next one, because now you're grabbing code from AI. You have to review that code, and then you have to make changes to the code. So I guess the question would be, is it really helping me to be productive if I have to do this? So that's one of the challenges I've faced with using LLMs. They work for a particular period of time before they start just giving you something that you have to redo all over by yourself.
Yeah. So with LLMs, your experience for text, for generating text, like FreeCodeCamp social media posts, we have very popular like X-Twitter account. We have a popular LinkedIn account, and we share learning resources on there like basically every 4 hours. I think we tweet or we post on LinkedIn. And we also post on like Blue Sky and Threads, if anybody uses that, and stuff like that. But coming up with the copy to like summarize the article and say something interesting and useful, and this does work. Like, our social media performs incredibly well when you compare it to like, I don't know, like a typical corporation that might just like, or if you just like literally tweet a blog post without really explaining it at all, like it does get people a lot more interested in the subject matter, and you kind of pre-qualify people. That is an art and a science. And just asking your LLM, like, here's a bunch of previous social media posts, create new ones. You found that doesn't work very well.
Yes, it doesn't work very well. So yeah. I tried this with ChatGPT and then tried it with Claude AI. So Claude was a bit better at doing it, but what they give as a response it's very, very easy to spot that it was done with an AI. So it doesn't feel like something a human is saying. And I had an issue with that. It takes time to sort of craft a post that you feel like, okay, this is better and the community might engage with this. But when you get responses from the AI, the very first one might be decent, but it won't be good enough. I'd say AIs or LLMs are like ChatGPT and Claude AI. They are way better at being a coding assistant than creating sort of like social media posts that are going to get people engaged in your content. So that's something I've just experienced with when doing text-based prompts. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would argue the same thing real quick. Like, generally, when the actual like output is directly visible by people, like with text, for example, that they're going to be reading, it shows a lot more. Like the AI kind of like mediocrity comes through a lot more. When it's code and it's obscured, it's like on a web server somewhere. People don't necessarily know that the code was generated by an LLM, and it's not such a big deal. But yeah, I can definitely spot like LLM, and unfortunately, like people have misinformation about how LLMs work. Like, oh, if you see something with a whole lot of M dashes, that means it was written by an LLM. Well, that's actually because authors like me, like you, use M dashes a lot, and it's just it's trying to write like human authors. So just be very careful when you accuse somebody of like using an LLM to write something, because the LLMs are trained to write like human writers, and now human writers are starting to like adapt their style a little bit. But it's going to be an interesting kind of like, you know, circular chase. Essentially, like the humans adapt to not read like LLMs anymore because LLMs have copied their style, and then the LLMs will gradually adapt and just start writing like humans. So it's going to be an interesting progress, an interesting sequence of events coming down the pipes for human authors. Do you think that the AI tools will improve dramatically for technical writing over the coming years? Like, how much hope do you have that like you will be able to just take, you know, some bullet points or something like that, and it'll be able to expand it into an actual thoughtful article on the caliber of what like a professional technical writer would write?
Yeah, I agree that it will happen, but when is the problem? I'm not sure it's going to happen anytime soon. I know that the job market for technical writers, I've not done freelance writing in years because at some point when I joined freeCodeCamp full time, I had to focus on school and work. So, but I know that from my friends who did technical writing jobs, some of them don't do it anymore because it's very difficult to land technical writing jobs now. But then what I would say is the quality of articles they write is still not very good. You would still need a human to review it and do some editing. But LLMs have made a ton of progress in writing, but they are not sort of at that point where you can grab a copy of what they've given you and just dump it in your editor and publish it. So I think we are still a long way out from getting to that point. But at this point, LLMs are not very, very solid at create, unless you are just interested in publishing maybe 10 articles in a day. Fine, that will work for you. But when it comes to high quality technical articles, you still need humans to write that.
Yeah, and you don't even need an LLM to write articles. Like in sports writing, like people covering, you know, football games and stuff like that in the US, for decades we've had software that essentially you input the score, you input the sequence of like this team scored, then this team scored, and it goes through and like procedurally kind of generates a sports article. We've had that for decades. You don't need an LLM to do that sort of stuff, but then you still have like very high-end sports writing that's written by actual journalists that watch the game and like make notes about it and things like that, and then have like their thoughtful commentary on it. So I do think that like if you're a company and you're like, we don't need technical writers anymore, we don't need documentation engineers, like don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. The tools are not there yet in many respects, and you're going to have a mediocre product. If it's a situation where it doesn't matter if it's mediocre, then maybe that's okay. A good example is like timestamps in podcasts. Like I don't personally go through and listen to the podcast and like say, okay, this is what the timestamp title should be for this section. I think it's okay if I just let an LLM summarize it and come up with the timestamps, right? So Bo and I use tools for that. We don't actually manually create the timestamps for the podcast. And I think that's an example of like work that just wouldn't have been done frankly. Like, it wouldn't have been worth our time to necessarily go through and like create detailed timestamps of what different topics we were talking about at different points. So we can just hand that to an LLM and it's going to do a better job than the job not getting done at all. If you're a small team, maybe you don't have the budget to bring on somebody to actually properly document your code, and your LLM can generate it. But and then you'll have some documentation, which is better than nothing. But I think that it sounds like what you're talking about with the decline in job opportunities for technical writers and things like that. What has happened is Cory Doctorow has this famous quote: "AI can't do your job, but the AI salesman can convince your boss that AI can do your job and to fire you and hire, essentially buy the AI software." And I imagine that's what's happening with technical writing right now. Whether there will be a correction or whether people will just get used to mediocre docs and mediocre technical writing about like different tools and stuff like that, that remains to be seen. But it is interesting to hear from you that you think that the software, it's premature. The transition to having LLMs write everything is premature. We're not ready yet.
Yes.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about Arduino because you went to school, you studied mechatronic engineering, which I didn't really wasn't familiar with that, but that is a major offered by like MIT and Stanford and stuff like that. And it's kind of like mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, robotics all rolled into one. Can you talk about what you studied in school?
Yeah, so I studied mechatronics engineering, which involves mechanical, electrical, and computer engineering. You can say control engineering. So to just narrow it down, it involves sensors, actuators, and a microcontroller. So sort of like, let's say, a photoresistor or a bulb that powers on when it senses the presence of someone. You can narrow mechatronics engineering all the way down to that. You can even narrow it down to using a washing machine. When you click on a button, that's the sensor. It's just waiting for you to give out the information. And then the microcontroller inside the machine processes which information you've given it. And then the output is the actuator, which sort of like does the intended action. So you can summarize mechatronics engineering as just a sensor, a microcontroller that processes information from the sensor, and then an actuator that gives out the action, which is in most cases, usually the mechanical aspects. The actuators are usually the mechanical aspects. So the sensors could be a sensor that senses lights, that senses the moisture of the soil. You can build a smart system that just waters your plants when the soil moisture is dry. So that's mechatronics in action. And that sort of led me to gaining an interest in Arduino. Arduino is just a small board. This is sort of like a microcontroller. So you plug in sensors to it and then an actuator to certain pins. When something happens, the microcontroller processes what happened and then decides on what to do next. So that's just the whole summary of mechatronics engineering. Most people might call it robotics. It depends. Building smart systems, automated systems. That's just what mechatronics is about.
And I want to point out that you have an Arduino handbook that you published a while back. And maybe you can talk a little bit about why people should bother learning embedded systems. Because I think most of the engineering jobs out there right now are software engineering. And people love to work in the area of software because it's cheap, it's easy, you just roll back. Like, hardware is hard. What would be a reason for somebody who's interested in software engineering to take the time to learn some embedded systems and maybe pick up an Arduino board? How much would it cost to build like a very simple Arduino robotics project?
Yeah, so one of the measures that say you should pick up Arduino would be just to do it yourself. There are a ton of things you wouldn't know that you could do that are just simple. For instance, I talked about a project that measures the moisture of the soil. This doesn't take like a mega machine to just build it out. You just get the soil moisture sensor, which looks like a stick. You get sand, you get your plants, you put the stick into the sand, and that is all. You just hook it up to the Arduino board, and you never have to touch your plants again. That's just it. And also, you can make a career out of it. It involves software and hardware. So if you do go into embedded systems, you should have that in mind, that you could be working on hardware, or you could be working on the software aspects. So most times if you are doing software, you have to work on the microcontrollers. How does the sensors give information to the microcontroller? And how can I use the microcontroller to give out an output? So it's a very good field to explore as a developer if you're interested in stuff like that. Another aspect of it is that learning embedded systems sort of like shows you how hardware works under the hood. And there's another aspect of it. If you're going to learn software development using Arduino, you're going to learn a language built on the C++ programming language. So you can narrow it down all the way to hardware, understanding how hardware works, how to optimize memory, how to optimize asynchronous operations. What do I do when I face certain problems in my hardware? So learning embedded systems gives you an idea of how software can interact with hardware. When you turn on a light bulb, how does that actually work? You can now see how it works under the hood. Or when I step into a room and then the light comes on, you can actually figure out that there's a sensor somewhere using maybe infrared signals to measure how the room has changed and then maybe turn on a light bulb. So one of the biggest advantages is that you get to understand how hardware works under the hood and how you can use software to build smart systems.
Yeah, man, one of the recurring themes that I'm getting throughout this conversation, Ihechikara, is just the more you learn about just things that are related to programming, like just like the more, I guess, whole systems you're able to think about the world, like understanding how the hardware works, understanding how the software is interacting with it, and it just broadens your horizons in a sense. And similarly with what you were saying about chess, it builds up so many ancillary skills and so much ancillary domain expertise, taking the time to learn something unrelated to programming itself. So you strike me as somebody who's extremely curious. I know when, your family had that hardship, when your brother had to go to rehab, when it kind of wrecked your family financially, and your mother, supporting 6 kids, after being widowed, I think like 10 or so years earlier, you said that you lost interest in a lot of things at that moment. You lost interest in watching football, for example. Like it sounds like your world kind of like narrowed a little bit. And then over the past few years, it's been reopening. Can you talk a little bit about like what advice you would have to somebody who feels like their world has shrunk? Maybe there's something traumatic that's happened to them, and how they can go on that journey that you've gone to get interested in more and more things, because you strike me as somebody who is just interested in so many different things right now and extremely curious about the world around them. Yeah. What advice would you have?
Yeah, so the first advice is do not isolate yourself. This was the first mistake I made. So when I had these issues in the past, I had one major problem. It felt as if, like back to back, I was having like unfortunate events happen. And then when I finally got placed on academic probation, I felt like that was like the boiling point, like where everything just came crashing. So I sort of like isolated myself at that point, lost interest in a ton of things. But the advice I would give is try and talk to people. Do not neglect your health. This is one other thing that I feel that after I got the job, when the aspect of like family finances started getting way easier, I realized that I had done a lot of damage to my health, specifically my physical and mental health. I had issues with sleeping. So I would stay awake maybe till 6 a.m. in the morning, and then I would sleep. I might sleep for 4 hours and then wake up again. And I would feel so dizzy throughout the day. And then at night, I'll feel like, okay, I'm finally awake. I'll walk again. So I sort of destroyed my sleeping pattern when I was trying to get the job, because I would come back from school, I would head straight to learning how to code. And then my mental health, all those traumatic events did not just vanish. They were just there waiting. Since now I'm focused on trying to get paid and then helping my family out, all those traumatic events were sort of like in the background waiting for me to finish this particular task I'm doing. So when I finally got the job, all of them resurfaced again. So I've spent the better part of 2 years trying to focus on my health, my mental, my physical health. So my biggest advice to anybody who is in a difficult situation where you feel like there's actually no hope or the world is against you and all that, find people that you can talk to, somebody you trust. You don't have to tell them everything about your life, but no matter what you do, do not isolate yourself. When you go into isolation, there are a lot of bad thoughts that you could have. I got lucky in my case. I was not thinking about doing maybe something that would make my health worse. I was just focused on getting out of that situation. But I was still isolated. I had friends, but I was so distant from them and others. So find people you can talk to. Find a skill to learn. Keep yourself busy. No matter your financial situation, your health has to be top priority. A friend told me that sleeping well is as good as drinking water. So I took that very seriously. I cannot do the work if I'm not feeling 100%. So get a lot of sleep. Focus on your health, both physically, both mentally. This is something we don't talk about enough. Your health is as important as the job. If you're always burnt out, your work is going to be very average. And that's something I don't want. I always want my work to be very valuable. I don't want to say I've not slept for the past 10 days and I'm sorry about the code I wrote. Yes, at some point I do write bad code, and that's why having colleagues is important. I get a ton of feedback, I improve, and I remember earlier this year I took some time off to just focus a bit on my health, getting better sleep. So if you have to take a break, take breaks. But yeah, that's my advice. Don't isolate, find communities, keep yourself busy, and focus on your health.
Awesome. Don't isolate. Keep yourself busy. Focus on your health. Find communities. Excellent tips to live by and to end on. Ihechikara, it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you. Thanks for all the important work you're doing on the upcoming Python curriculum. Thanks for creating this excellent chess endgames course. We're hoping to get some more chess courses up on the FreeCodeCamp YouTube channel and some more chess books up on the FreeCodeCamp publication. Because like I 100% agree with a lot of your conclusions that there's a lot of overlap. Of course, it's a different skill, it's a different action, but you are building up a lot of the faculties that you're going to use when you're programming. And importantly, you're building up that kind of mental endurance. You talked a lot about that. Any closing advice to people on top of what you've already said before we part ways?
Yes. First of all, I have a chess course that I'm planning, which might be out towards the end of the year or beginning of next year. So I'm improving the video content a lot, which is, I want to use visuals this time to pass a lot of information. So I'm planning a chess course on pawn structures. The topic might change, but yes, I'm planning a chess course. And then my final advice is that learning how to code is difficult. Don't beat yourself up. It takes a gradual process. You have to be very patient. We started the video by talking about some certain concepts of chess that overlaps with software development. So I want to focus specifically on patience. If you're learning how to code, it takes time. And the tech industry is not the software development industry is not going anywhere anytime soon. If you're afraid that AI is going to take your job, focus on learning. You're going to get to the point where you've learned enough that AI cannot compete with you. And that's just the thing. If you keep improving, the work will speak for itself. So that's just the closing remark for me. Thank you for your time.
Learn enough that AI can't compete with you. Thank you so much, Ihechikara. Everybody tuning in. Until next week, happy coding.